I am Mike Lyons, your host for another oral history interview for the Jacksonville Broadcasters Association. The association's purpose is to preserve the rich history and contributions of the area's radio, television, and broadcasting industries. The association is open to those past and present broadcasters and those affiliated with the region's broadcasting industry and entities who have served this region's proud broadcasting heritage. We welcome students who are focusing their careers on the broadcasting industry. Right now, we are doing this interview in February of 2021. Our guest today is Angela Spears, who spent over a decade at WTLV, Channel 12 as a reporter and an anchor. Angela, thanks for being with us today.
Hey, Mike, this is just so wonderful to capture this history. I love it because we learn so much about those who've been in our industry right here on the First Coast, right here in Jacksonville.
A lot of things you never knew.
Yeah, about people. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Now, as a youngster, you said you always wanted to be a teacher.
Yes, I always grew up saying I wanted to be a teacher. My mom was a teacher. I have uncles who were educators, and I always wanted to be a teacher. I used to play teacher at my grandmother's house. I remember doing that in my aunt's room. And when I got to 7th grade, I joined drama class. And I was in the drama class from 7th grade all the way up into my senior year of high school. And that opened up my love for public speaking, right? I did public speaking, I did acting, and I loved that. I always said I was going to be a teacher, And then I guess about my 12th grade year when I was deciding what I wanted to do in college, I changed to journalism. I always said I wanted to be the next Oprah. And then I just changed to journalism. I said, why not? I like to write, I like to talk, I like to be in front of people. I think I want to do this job.
But Oprah was a big inspiration for you.
Oh, of course. Like, who doesn't love Oprah? She's the woman. I loved Oprah. Used to always watch her shows.
And she was good at telling stories herself.
And that's what it's about. It's about storytelling. And that's what I like doing. And I still love doing that. It's about storytelling. It's about talking with that person, capturing that story, getting that emotion so that you can say, hey, this is what's happening, right? This is what happened to this person. And then tell the other side of the story as well. Mm-hmm. Storytelling is essential.
I guess from talking to you, you mentioned it, you like writing. Mm-hmm. As a journalist, and you really need to enjoy writing and like that and study that. You need to do that.
We have to know how to write. A lot of times we have to think on our feet. As you know, something could be happening and you may have, I always tell when I talk with people, I always say sometimes I have 5 minutes to get a story together. Sometimes I have 5 hours to get it together, right? Because we could be on breaking news just like that and they're like, go live. As quick as your photographer can set up the truck, but now it's more instant than that. They don't necessarily have to set up a truck anymore, like back in our day, right? When you had to put up the mast and everything. But you have to sometimes be able to know the story. Sometimes when you're anchoring, you're sitting there, they're saying, hey, breaking news is coming on. You're looking at a screen, right? You have to be able to talk. You have to be able to know how to write that and think about it quickly, process it.
Right, and have to, in the TV business, bring it down to a minute and a half or even less.
Oh, that's tough sometimes.
Yeah.
Because you know how it is. You were on the assignment desk. You tell us to go out there and do that story. I'm like, this isn't a story. You're like, yes, it is. And you got to find the story, make the story, and then condense the story. And I remember my very first story I did in television when I got in March of '95. My very first story I started, and it was my full-time job. When I started full-time, because I worked there part-time, but full-time, very first story. My photographer kept saying this story was never ending because I wrote so much and he was like, it just wouldn't end. We did not make slot because we were so late because he kept editing and he kept editing and he kept editing. He was like, this can't be this long in the future. So I had a producer and I respect her to this day. She politely called me and she just said, this is not what we do. We don't miss slot. And from then on, I was like, oh, okay. She was like, you make slot. And she explained to me what happens when you don't make it on time, of how if we're to hit at 5:04, we're to hit at 5:04 because it impacts everybody in the show. And you see how we had to scramble. And I said, but I had so much to say. She said, well, cut it down next time.
So you wanted to write too much, but you're
Yes.
right. You got to learn how to write. I don't know what the word is, but just precise. You
Yeah,
gotta
be precise, and you know what, you can't put everything in there, right? You have to learn, this is what's gonna happen here, bam, 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 get a couple sound bites, and move on. Mm-hmm. And still tell the story.
Right, so you grew up in Corpus Christi.
Yes,
right?
Corpus Christi, Texas.
Yeah, big Texan, proud Texan.
I am.
And then you decided after high school that you were gonna be in journalism, and you went on to University of Texas, Austin.
Hook 'em. I'm a Longhorn. I bleed burnt orange and white. Love my Longhorns. And that's where, and I majored in journalism and broadcast news.
What was it like going to Texas? That's a big place to go to.
Oh my God. Can I tell you, it was so much fun. And now that I look back on it, one of my good friends, one of my best friends, he and I still talk. We were in our broadcast classes together. We'd have so much fun just going out doing things. It was tough getting in. At UT, they've changed it now, but back then, I say back then, like it was so long ago, right? 91, I graduated in 95. This is when I started there. We would have to, the College of Communication, you had different departments within the College of Communication. And I was in the journalism department, and then within the journalism department, you had different sequences, and you had to audition to get into the broadcast news sequence. So it was very competitive. In the fall, they only took like 12 to 14 people, I think. And then in the spring, they only took like no more than 23, 24 people. So you had to audition, you had to sit, and you had to anchor, and you had to do an interview and take a current events quiz. So it was something just to get into the sequence, to take those 3 classes.
Oh, wow. And broadcasting news, that was the part of it you always wanted to get into.
Yes.
From the journalism. You mentioned to me internships. You were able to do several internships being at the University of Texas?
Yes, internships helped me in my career. And I think I had the best internships. I had a radio internship one time in college. I cannot remember the station, but it was a radio internship. And I had an opportunity to interview the great late Barbara Jordan. And I just sat there the whole time and interviewed like this. Yes, ma'am. Because I was just in such awe of who she was. So that was amazing. I had an internship with CNN in Chicago. That was a lot of fun. So I spent a summer in Chicago. And the 2 guys, Kevin and John Gilbert, Kevin McPherson, John Gilbert, I had an internship with KDFW. It was a Dallas station, and we had a bureau in Austin. Those guys were the best things since sliced bread. And can I tell you, Kevin really, really prepared me for the TV industry. When I got there, I remember this. He would always say, hey, this is what you're going to do as an intern. You're going to do at least 3 packages before you leave. You're going to write and edit. He goes, if you don't like it, don't come back. He said, you're going to come in here when you have your days. You're going to come with us from the beginning of our shift to the end of the shift. So you need to find a way to get here. You need to be here from 9 in the morning until 6 in the afternoon and stay with us so you get the full experience. He said, if you don't like it, don't come back. Everything was like, if you don't like how this works, don't come back. I'm like, okay. Oh, okay, yes, sir, yes, sir. But, and he made me carry the tripod whenever we went out places. And so it was always a lot of fun. But it was they were the best things since sliced bread. They really, really prepared me for my first job.
Right.
And so I was able to get my first job while I was still in school.
So UT really pointed you to some good places to be an intern, because I know a lot of times when I was in the interns, I mean, they were lucky to answer the phone. Yeah. But it sounds like to me that you were able to do things and really
hands-on. And that's so important. I think especially for this new generation, this next generation of journalists, you really have to get that hands-on experience. Like they made me do things, right? They were like, this is what you're gonna do. I was editing so much so that I remember it was the second part of my semester of the internship. They let me stay on. I wasn't supposed to because I wasn't getting credit, but they're like, you do such good work, you're here, you're dedicated, like stay on. I was like, good, because I still need this to help me for my career. But it was, get this, I edited a story one time when I was in college for a Dallas station because my videographer, he was out and they got a videographer, from the Austin station to do something. The guy was like, I can't edit it for you. I had to edit it for the reporter for Dallas station. Can you believe that?
Right, so something you did as an intern ended up on air in Dallas.
Yes. I was like so nervous. I was like, oh my God. But you know what? The reporter trusted me. He's like, we can get it done. I mean, he was pressuring me a little, but we got it done. And that's what it was about, because it was that great experience. When I was doing stand-ups, my videographer, the photographer, he only told me you have 3 takes. He was like, you have to do your stand-up in 3 takes. If you don't do it in 3 takes, he goes, we're moving on. You just don't have one for the story.
Man.
Because and that's something that I tell young people as well. You only have 3 chances, because that's how I learned. And the process was, he said, because we don't have all day to spend, we're doing a story. Because remember, I was going with them when they're actually out doing stories. And you know how it is. You don't have all day to spend on one story. So they didn't have all day to spend with me. I needed to be thinking about, because I'd hear the reporter do his interview, right? And I know what the story is about because sometimes I'd make calls for him. So the idea was I need to be able to have myself organized enough so that when I'm ready to do a stand-up, I could do it. And I took that into my career. So it was very rare that I went over, so many times. If I did, I'm like, oh my God, I'd be like so mad at myself. But that was something I learned, 3 takes, and that's all you get.
I remember I interned at Channel 12, and I kept a journal. On the second day I worked there as an intern, I shot the lead story for the one of their ace reporters, and with a camera I'd never used in my life.
But isn't that great though?
Oh,
you got that experience.
You learn by doing, and it puts you right in there, and it was amazing.
It really was. It was so much fun, and I think that gave me that, along with my professors, Gail and Marilyn. Marilyn, God rest her soul, and Gail, they were really tough on me. But I loved it. And he always said, I went back, I talked to Gail now. I went to his retirement party in Austin, talked to him on Facebook. And, I was asking, why were you so hard? It was my friend Tim. I said, why were you so hard on us? Not mean. He wasn't mean, but just hard on us and expect his expectations. He said, because I expected a lot out of y'all because y'all were good and I knew y'all could do it. And I knew that y'all could handle the pressure. I'm like, oh, okay.
So you mentioned you got a job in Waco. Your first job out of college was Waco, but you worked at Waco before you even got out of college. Is that
yes.
worked?
It was a Waco station. It was a CBS affiliate. They had a bureau in Killeen. So I was doing, in March, we used to call it the Texas tour, where you drive around to all these little towns to see if you could get you drop off your tape. Remember back in the day, you didn't do it digitally. You had to actually have your tape, or, you mail it to them. You remember that. Don't act like you don't know what I'm talking about. But you had to have your tape, and you did that. I did my Texas tour. I remember going to Amarillo, and I remember seeing tumbleweed, like, rolling down the street, and I was like, this is real? I'm like, I don't think I could live here. But anyway, so I went to the station in Waco, and I was supposed to go visit 2 stations. And I went to one, I ate something, got sick, and I was called the other one. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I can't make it. And so that afternoon, they called me and offered me a job. And I was like, okay, but I'm still in school. I still had my internship because I was doing that 3 days a week. And so it was part-time. I just went to Killeen on weekends, and then it got to be where, oh, we have someone calling sick. Can you come in on Monday? Can you come in on this day? So I'd have to ask my internship coordinator. He'd be like, yeah, you think you're big time, huh? He would mess with me, but he was so proud. He was like, of course, go to your job, go to the job. And I did that part-time, and then May, when I graduated, I sent an email to my news director, and I said, hey, when am I going to start full-time? How about this day? He said, oh, okay.
Oh, wow.
So I just kind of said, okay, we're going to do this. I'm going to try this.
I noticed you said bureau a lot in talking to you yesterday, beforehand, and a lot of bureaus in Texas, because Texas is a big place.
Yes, right? It really is. It really is. And so, like with Dallas Station, right? Because they had a bureau in Austin because that's the state capital. Right. So that was their job, to cover the capital and news surrounding that. In Waco, that's where the main station was, but the coverage area is Waco, Temple, Killeen. So we had a bureau there in Killeen. So because that's where they gathered some of their news from. So that's where I worked out of there. Killeen, people probably know Fort Hood. People probably know, do you remember George Hennard, the guy who went to the Lubies, drove his truck to the Lubies and shot out all those people? People always ask me about that story. David Koresh, no, I was not in Waco when that happened either. Those are some of the big stories that people remember Waco for.
Koresh, was that before or after you were there?
Before. I remember watching it burn down when I was in college, standing there going, oh my gosh, what's going on?
I was going to ask you, okay, you got your first job in Waco, what it was like. I mean, but you had a precursor of it in college, but that's your first job, full-time in Waco. What was that like?
It was very interesting. I loved the people. The people were so nice. The people in Killeen, they always treated me so nicely. Back then, I keep saying back then. Gosh, I feel like I'm ancient or something, Mike. But back then, you had time to cultivate sources. So there'd be times when I would go and hang out with the guys at the fire department, right? Hanging out with different people because I had time to cultivate those stories and those sources. So that was a lot of fun being able to do that in Killeen. I spent 2.5 years there. In my last few months, I was in Waco, the main station, because I started anchoring more. While I was there, I was maybe there, I don't know, a few months in, and I started anchoring the weekend shows. So I would drive on weekends to Waco. So from Killeen, driving up back, it was about an hour drive. So driving that to anchor the weekend shows. But it was a lot of fun. And the people just treated me so well. And I love the area.
So how did you end up in Jacksonville, Florida?
Wow. I just said I knew it was time to move on. I knew I wanted to move. I applied all over the country, sending tapes, sending emails, making, sending letters, making phone calls. And I don't know, something just, I'd never really heard of Jacksonville, but I was doing my research and knew I wanted to go to Florida. And I was like, how about Jacksonville? And so I remember sending my tape, and then I would call like every week. I'd call our, we used to work together at First Coast News. I'd call every week. And so one day when I happened to call, the old news director, God rest his soul, Bart Swinson, picked up the phone, said, "Hi, Bart Swinson here." And I said, "Oh my God, you are so hard to reach." This is literally how the conversation went. I said, "You are so hard to reach." And he said, "Well, I'd like to be on the floor and do things. I'm busy." And I said, "Okay." I said, "Well, I sent a resume tape into you." And he said, "Yeah, we're going through them and we're putting things in the save and not save pile." I went, "Well, where's my tape?" He said, "What's in the save pile?" I went, "Whew, now that we've gotten through that." And so then I came up and interviewed and got the job.
Now you went from Waco, you came to Jacksonville. How was that different to you? I mean,
the weather was pretty much the same because I grew up in South Texas in Corpus Christi. So the weather here reminded me of the same. Sometimes in Austin and Waco it would get just a little colder. So weather-wise, when I first moved here, the humidity was really bad. I wasn't used to that. But city-wise, the people, I love the people here because in the city they embrace you, right? People, and they see you, they come up to you, they just are welcoming. And so I really, really liked it. It was a bit more challenging story-wise, which I expected, right, when I got here, because it's a bigger market, bigger expectations, more things to do. So, but I loved it here too.
Did you start in the morning at 12?
Yes.
I was there. So you worked the morning show the entire time you were
Yes,
pretty much
morning,
at 12.
and then I started later on, about 3-4 years in. I can't remember how many years in, but several years later I anchored the noon. But yes, the morning show was my gig. And we used to have a live shot every morning. We'd have to do 4 live shots, 3 to 4 live shots every morning. And that was a lot of fun. It was very intense, but a lot of fun because you constantly have a deadline, right? Every 30 minutes I knew I had a deadline. You asked me earlier about writing. Every 30 minutes, I knew I had to write something. Sometimes you'd have teases, so you had to be ready. You had to write stuff and get things going.
Yeah, I did that morning shift sometime before you. That was rough.
But you get used to it.
Right.
You get used to it. I knew my hours when I'd go to sleep, and yeah, you get used to it.
But you were part of a team, met some great, and worked with some great people there at 12, and had to develop a real team there in the mornings.
Oh, it was great. It was great. I started with my team with my videographer, my photographer, Ken Thomas. That was my work husband. Yeah. And we really were like husband and wife some days. He would say, like, we'd go places and we'd set up stuff. People ask you if you want coffee, you want orange juice, you want coffee. Before they'd ask me, I'm like, no, thank you. And they'd ask him, I go, no, he doesn't need any. And then blah, blah, blah. So it was really like a wife. I'd answer questions for him and he'd be like, thanks. She's my wife, ask her. So I'd be like, but he'll take some orange juice instead. I'm like, he won't drink this, but he'll do this. And,
so y'all really worked as a real team.
Yeah, because you got to know him. I was with him every morning, and his wife knew that too. And I'd say, oh, he can't make it here to do this, blah, blah, blah. So, so his wife knew, Misty knew. So it was fun. So that team, and then, the on-air team with Patty, Phil, and Steve. So that was always a lot of fun. Phil Amato, Patty Crosby, Steve Smith. We really were that morning show team.
And they had to help you as well.
Oh, yeah. Because you're there, they have to know what's going on. They have to know the stories, and they're concerned about what's going on in the community. Because what it was really about, it was about storytelling, right? It was about telling what was going on in our community and sharing that with our viewers and making sure that our viewers knew and understood what was happening.
Mm-hmm. What did you like best about working at TLV 12?
Wow, God, there's so many. I think the people, I enjoyed my team of people. I enjoyed just the people who I've met because no day was the same. Every day was different. I met people on the best day of their lives. I met people on the worst days of their lives. There's some people now who've kept up with me even out of TV. I've been out of TV since 2009 who still contact me. And they're like, oh, Angela, how you doing? Hope all is well. So it's those connections that you make with people. And because you don't know sometimes what one story does for a person's life. that can change them, that can impact them. And sometimes, you know, we as you journalists don't always remember the stories, but that person does. And you're like, oh yeah, I do remember that now, and making that connection. And I think that's what I liked most about it, was the people who I worked with and the people who I was able to meet and tell their stories.
And you saw some change in Jacksonville from the time you came until now, and were able to witness that. How would you say Jacksonville changed from the time you got here?
You know, I used to live on the south side, right? Bay Meadows area. That was one area that when you went down Bay Meadows, it was 2 lanes. And then, you know, now look at it. You go past Bay Meadows and past, what is it, 295, 9AB, whatever it's called back there. You know, that wasn't there. I remember doing a story when that first opened, that interchange opened, where we drove down that, you know, and it was like, oh, this is going to be opening now to people. So it's definitely changed, you know, just around seeing the growth, seeing our downtown grow. It's just amazing seeing buildings that are demolished, you know, that were there. You remember the old baseball grounds, the baseball stadium, the Wilson Stadium, you know, watching that implode. That was there right by the station, and now it's not. So just some of those changes is amazing to see.
What's some of the most interesting stories that you remember covering in Jacksonville?
Gosh, wow, there's so many. Mike,
It's hard
it's so hard to to nail it down. There's so many that I've done, so many people that I was able to meet and do. I know this isn't in Jacksonville, but one that always comes to mind when I was in Waco and Killeen area.
Which is, I talked to you about your go-to story.
Yes. My go-to story was, I did a story about black cowboys. You know, how they were doing something. It was just fun, just meeting them and talking with them. And I remember there's a story I won an AP award for when I was in Waco, with going to, it was a women's prison, and they were growing fruits and vegetables. And my videographer and I, we really talked about how we wanted to do this story, because everybody just did it. Yeah, Department of Justice has this new program, you know, where the inmates are growing the fruits and vegetables, and that's how most of the other stations took it. Okay, yeah, talking this. Well, the ladies, when they were like digging and doing everything, they would rap and they would do things. And you know, you had one of the guards was on his horse, and he would participate. Like, they'd be like, hey, ha, and he'd say, hit 'em high, girls, hit 'em high. You know, and so that was so much fun doing that story, because that was the aspect that we took. You know, we did the singing, the dancing, and then we incorporated, oh, by the way, the state is there. This is what they're doing. They're growing their own fruits and vegetables and blah, blah, blah. But we took a different spin, and we won an award for it. So that was a lot of fun. And just here in Jacksonville, like I said, there's just so many stories. Oh, I do have one. It was covering the fair. Luckily, Ken Thomas, my photographer, my videographer, did not get this. Luckily, nobody saw this, but Gail and I. She used to be at the fairgrounds, Gail Hart. And, you know, I always asked her, I'm like, you know, we need something interesting, right? One year was the year of the pig, I forget the theme, but it was about pigs. So she got a pig. She's like, Angela, we have this area for you, blah, blah. I don't even think Ken saw it, because he was setting up, because if he saw it, he would have been recording this, and it would have been memorialized somewhere. So she was like, okay, well, yeah, we can get the pig. And I said, Gail, go get me the baby pig right there. So she goes in, and the mama pig wakes up, and she's in there squealing. I'm like, oh my God, hurry, get out. You know, so that was kind of behind the scenes stuff, you know, but it was a lot of fun, because then she had to jump over the fence to get away from the mama pig, because the mama pig came after her because she had the baby pig. So when I was holding the pig, that pig squealed the whole time when we were on air. So I said, here, go put it back. So I'm not going in there. So she had to go put the pig back and run. So it's just those types of things that make it so much fun.
Ken Thomas tells me you did a story about an alligator on the side of the road on the north side. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, where it was just there, and they had to go get they have the trappers, and they had to get it. That was a lot of fun, just seeing that. You're like, wow, you drive up, it's not a scene that you expect to see. And that's how I think we started the story out. It's like, this is an unlikely scene as you're driving down the highway. An alligator on the side of the road.
Al and I was ringside, and boy, it was quite a sight. Several people lined this side of the street here to watch alligator control tangle with a 10-foot reptile. It's the usual morning traffic zipping down Main Street. Every once in a while, you think you see something out of the ordinary. You usually don't have time to stop and check it out. But on this sunny Florida day, you wish you would have. Because if you had, you would have seen this incredible sight.
I think it's awesome.
A CSX employee saw the 10-foot alligator beside the track in Ocean Way and called in the professionals. Meet Mike Haley, the nuisance Gator Patrol. He's been trapping the reptiles for more than 10 years. To him, it's no big deal.
If he gets his feet down, he can get to rolling real bad. I won't put myself in a position to get bit or nothing. I'll handle everything and take my time with it.
It's an old-fashioned wrestling match, man versus gator.
These tails right here, they're just like iguanas, how they'll whip you with them. That's most of their defense, most of the night, other than their bite, of course.
Spectators watch in amazement as the gator continues to struggle, giving Haley all he's got.
A big gator like that, one or two of them a day, you're whooped.
The match is over. The gator isn't a nuisance anymore. So the next time you think you see something strange on the side of the road, you might want to check it out.
Now, no one was hurt during the capture, but those of us who were out here were a little jumpy, literally, at first. The man who trapped the alligator is running to a problem tonight. He says he's been calling around to different alligator farms all day long and can't find anyone who wants to take the 10-foot gator. He's not giving up. He says he will continue to look until he finds a place for the gator until it's back where
We didn't expect to see that. And we have some interesting stories covering hurricanes, things like that. Those were always interesting. I mean, yes, they were dangerous. They were, I hate to say exciting, but it was, because you're there, you're covering the story, you're intense, you're in the moment, and you're trying to get people to safety, making sure they stay out, but yet you're in it.
Yeah.
Right? I remember this one time, Ken and I, we had worked hours and hours, and we fell asleep. It was our time to, just take a break. We were there, and he woke up and he said, yeah, I don't know, he talked about some whale being in the water or something. I said, okay, we'll get it in a little while. And we both went to sleep. So it's like those types of things. You're just like, oh.
You told me about a story you did about swimmers at bowls, 20-degree weather.
Yes. Oh my God. I didn't get in the water, right? I
Why
wasn't
not?
getting in the No. I was not participating in that story.
Right.
But that was so much fun, right? Because it was these swimmers, the pool was heated, they got in, did their job, and it was just amazing that they were still able to swim and work out. And the cold didn't bother them at all. And they kept going. I was like, well, okay.
It's 5:30 a.m. Off goes the pool cover. And believe it or not, so too do these swimmers' parkas.
It's cold, but the faster you swim, the better it gets. I gotta keep moving, get all my blood flowing, get my adrenaline going. It's pretty, I get warm.
Members of the Bowles School swim team glide through the mist. The freezing temperature didn't keep them from their 4-mile.
So it's those type of stories that are very, very interesting, right? Because it's good storytelling. Those are good stories to know that, oh, this is how swimmers train, that they train year round. Whether it's hot, whether it's cold, they're training and doing what they do to hone in their craft. So that's
And
a
a
lot
lot of them
fun.
at bowls end up in the Olympics.
Yes, yes.
And
I remember we did a story that we were like the first ones. Remember when Tom Coughlin was coaching and they let him go? Ken and I, we were the first ones we were the only ones who had a soundbite with him for the whole week. So that was something to get
wow.
that.
That's really a neat thing too. When you
Yeah.
get something nobody else gets, and you can really use that. That's really.
And everybody used it. Like the sports guys used it. Everybody used that interview that we got. It wasn't very long, but everybody was able to use that interview
right.
at the station.
Yeah. How did you end up going into the anchor chair? I guess you had auditioned to get into the anchor program at Texas. Is that something you obviously wanted to do?
Oh,
or
yeah.
How did you end up doing that?
That's a different way of storytelling. It's a different way to communicate with the audience and tell what's going on. I just one day asked, is there an opportunity? It started with me filling in the morning shows when my colleagues, when they were out, when one was out, and just asking and saying, hey, and the opportunity came about. And so I was yeah, I'll do it. And so it's a lot of fun because it's a different type of pressure on you because you're live.
Now back to our other big story this afternoon. One lady is dead, several others hurt after two multiple vehicle pileups on I-295. Both of those crashes happened around 2 o'clock this morning on both sides of I-295 between Pritchard Road and US 1. Now the interstate was closed for about 6 hours today. First Coast News' Roger Reeder is live on I-295 where crews are still cleaning up the mess.
You know you have to be there. And you have producers in your ear saying, okay, this story's cut. You're like, okay, yeah. Or whenever stories come up, I know it's been where they're like, okay, we're going to a plane crash that happened somewhere else. Here's all we know. And it'll just be 3 or 4 tidbits. So I'm having to look at the screen, listen to them, talk about, okay, this plane is down in the field. We don't know if anyone's hurt right now. Investigators are on their way, and you're having to talk about it.
On the fly.
Yeah, on the fly. And you're based upon what your producer's telling you and what you're seeing on the screen. And what you know from your knowledge, right? Anytime there's an accident that the FAA is going to come and investigate, right? The NTSB is going to come in, the NTSB is going to come in and investigate, right? So you're going to say NTSB isn't there yet. Obviously, they will be called. So some of the stuff, the fire department may come to something. Police are going to come, right? So you draw on your knowledge of what you know from other stories of what's going to happen when you see things like that.
Interesting people you met in Jacksonville. The list would be forever if you had a chance to sit down and list them all. But can you name 1 or 2 or off the top of your head that come to your mind that you remember?
I remember meeting Joe Montana. I love Joey. That's what I call him. He doesn't know about. He's Joey to me.
I have a picture of me and Joe when he came to the Super Bowl.
Yes.
In the newsroom.
Yes.
Hanging on my wall in my house.
Yes.
Yeah.
He came in and because I was anchoring the noon show and I said, I am going to be here for this. He walked up and I don't get starstruck because, I did a junket where I sat down and I interviewed Dick Clark. The forever teenager, that was something. Kelsey Grammer, that was something. But when Joe walked in and I said, oh my God, you're Joe Montana. And he was like, yes. And I said, I'm Angela. I said, nice to meet you. I go, you're the best, right? I said, you're the best quarterback ever. And he was like, thanks. I go, I know I'm not supposed to be biased. I said, but you're the best, right? And he was like, okay, thanks. And so I'm interviewing. I'm like, And like I said, I normally don't get starstruck, but I got starstruck over Joe Montana. I'm like, you're the best ever. I'm like, I love you. And he was like, oh, okay. So he probably thought, who is this weird lady here?
So you must have rooted for his team in the Super Bowl then, I guess.
Well, I would after, always Cowboys first. But, and they were always second back in the day. But yeah, so when he was in there, of course, I would go for Joe Montana because I love Joe Montana, Roger Craig, back in the day, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. Jerry Rice.
Yeah. How did it come to leave the business and go into the PR part of it? I
just decided at one point that I wanted something different. For me, news was changing. As we know, it continues to evolve. Sometimes in news now, they don't always have time to get both sides of the story, and unfortunately. I'm not saying that people don't do a good job because I think it's credible. I think it's so important what the news does. But for me, it was really about that storytelling. It was about really having that time. And I just felt for me, it was time to move on, to do something different. Like I said, I still love it. I'm still a news hound. I watch the news every day. I'm watching our local newscast all the time, national newscast, everything that's going on. But it was just time for something different in my life, for me. And so I just said, what do I want to do? What can I do? And decided to get out of that and do public information and being a public information officer and do PR work.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the news. How would you describe how the news has changed, especially the national news? It's so much different than
back in our day.
I remember. Yeah. I mean, it's now it is so much opinion news or whatever. Yeah. It's just, I never really gave my opinion about anything unless it was something that didn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, that's a cute kid. Yeah, oh, what a cute baby. That's okay to do.
Somebody nobody could argue with. But
exactly. But now it's so much. I think you're right. I think in news, because when I was on the news, I was in news right when it was the cusp of news, right? You did your stories, right? You got both sides. You took the time. And if I couldn't get Mike Lyons your side of the story, then we wouldn't do that story for the day, right? Now.
And you never gave Angela Spears' opinion.
No, because it wasn't about me. It was about the people in the story. This is what happened. These are the facts, right? And I even, you know, sometimes even with music, you know, I sometimes I like music and stories, and sometimes I don't, because music makes you feel a certain way, right?
Yeah.
When you have music, I'm already telling you how you're going to feel about the story. So that's why I didn't really, you know, sometimes I'm like, let's not use music in the story. I know it enhances a story, but that's, you know, one thing you're asking how it changes, right? Because it does. If it's boom, 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 you're going to be mad, and you know you're supposed to be mad. If it's soft and, you know, I need to feel this emotion, that kind of way. But I think that's how it's changed, is that sometimes we're not seeing that because it's so fast paced, because it is a 24-hour news cycle. Something is happening all the time, constantly, and you constantly have to feed the beast, right? It used to just be that type of thing, you know, where it just be in the morning, then at noon, 5 and 6, but now they have to feed the beast all day long because you have social media. You have the website that you have to put information on.
Right.
Think about recently the story with Tiger Woods, right? That's something they were feeding the beast all day long nationally with that story, right? He got into an accident, and, you know, all day long, what's happening now? What's happening now? What's going on now?
They
So I
could
think
learn
that's
a little
something.
bit here. They
You
learn
learn,
a
and
little
you
bit more.
and you have to come on air and share it.
Right, right. And part of your public relations work, you work for an elected sheriff in Nassau.
Yeah,
Work for
Nassau
an
and
elected
Clay
mayor
County.
in Jacksonville. And so you kind of learned some politics from the inside.
Oh,
That had to
yeah.
be interesting, and something that you really probably didn't know much about.
Oh, it's fun. Politics, and I can tell you, I love politics now. I love it, love it, love it, because that was an experience working in the mayor's office and I worked in the Alvin Brown administration, and working for him was something because his expectations were high. I always tell people this was a man who worked for a president of the United States. So there were things that I had to do, that we had to do, expectations, and most of all, getting things done for the city, right? Getting things done for our citizens. That's what always came first. So that was a lot of fun, learning that aspect, learning of, okay, really, who do you really call when there's a pothole, right? And then educating our citizens of, if you see this, we have to know that it's happened. Right? If you have a pothole, you just can't assume somebody knows. Call 630-CITY and let someone know that it's happening. Call your council person, right? Get involved. Call that person, making sure that they know that person knows what's going on in your community.
Skills you learn in broadcasting are handy for public relations.
You know,
and
I always
work.
say with a friend of mine, we always say working in a newsroom prepares you for any job. Because, you know, working in a newsroom is so stressful because no day's the same. Everybody wants the lead story. You're under constant pressure, right? Because you have a constant deadline. You have to sit there. You have to write a story, get it to a certain amount. You got to have producers. You're going back and forth with producers. No, cut this out. No, but this really has to be in. No, we don't have time for that. Come on, please, please, please. You know, you're negotiating with them of, let me put this in. Just, it has to be in. Well, can you make a VO out of it? Can we put it as a tag? You know, you're doing that negotiation all the time, negotiating with them all the time when it comes to those stories, right? And you're like, okay, well, where can we get it in? Now you have more room because someone can say, oh, we'll just put it on the web or just put it on social media. But back then, I think those skills with writing, those people skills, those interviewing skills that I have, I was able to take it over to all my other jobs, my careers, and what I do now.
Your advice to young people who want to get into broadcasting?
First of all, be serious about it if you really want to do it. And I know it's different now because they have to do so much more than what we did. I simply went in to report. I know now they have to know how to shoot. They have to know how to edit. And those were things that I didn't know how to do. I just, I was strictly focused on that, on the reporting aspect, because for me, that was important, being able to get that story, being able to talk with you and engage with you. But I guess my advice would be serious about it, talk with people, get experience, get an internship, and get a good internship. And when you have that internship, ask questions and make sure that you're hands-on, because that's so important. Even with my company, Angela Pierce Communication, I had an intern and I had her very hands-on. She was doing work, right? I would teach her along the way. I'd say, try this out. Okay, write this story for me on social media. How would you write this? Right? So that she got that hands-on experience, having her make the phone calls to set up stories for me. I need for you to call the media, right? Making sure that that you're hands-on with whatever it is that you do. And that's so important to do.
So your decision to go into broadcasting, thanks to Oprah, and then high school drama and all that.
Yeah.
Decision that you never ever, I'm sure, never regretted. I'm just sitting there talking to you. passionate is a word that would describe you.
Yes, and I would say I'm still a news person. I'm still a news person. I'm still a journalist. Whenever I talk with reporters now, I'm like, oh, I'm not one of y'all anymore, you know, because I have my own company. I have a marketing, public relations, community engagement company. I'm pitching stories, and they look at me and they're like, Angela, you're still one of us. You're still a journalist. Because I really am still at heart. It's still at heart, that's what I do, because I love storytelling, whether I'm pitching stories about my clients, right? I'm having to write about them and share it to the reporter saying, hey, this is a video you're going to have, right? It's going to be great video. I can get you pictures. I can get you this person. And that's what you need, right, to tell a story, to make that compelling story. And, you know, it's their job to find the opposite side of it if they want to, you know, tell that part of it. But if I'm pitching it, hey, okay, well, here's an idea that you can have to go with it.
So you're still working as a broadcast reporter.
I guess. I don't know. Yes. But yes, that's what they always tell me. They're like, you're still one of us, Angela.
Yeah.
And I love it.
Yeah.
I still do have the passion for it because I love the job, because as I mentioned, no day was the same. I love meeting people. I love telling their stories. And as I mentioned earlier, you meet people on the best day and you meet people on the worst days of their lives, you know, unfortunately. But it's still about telling their stories. Even when it's a worst day, it's about connecting with them, right? People, and saying, hey, I want to tell your story. Talk with me.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad you came on today. I've known you a long time. I've never seen you talk and put so much in 30 minutes or whatever we are in my life. I mean, really,
a lot to say.
Excellent. But thank you so much for being here with me today.
And I appreciate being a part of this oral history, because as I mentioned, this is just amazing to be able to share these stories, to be able to tell this story of what it was like for us being broadcasters here in Jacksonville. So I so appreciate you, Mike.
Thank you very much.